Hunters of Reddit, what did you see out there that made you not want to go back into the woods? Please like and subscribe to support us. I do a lot of hiking and mountain biking in the woods. Nothing has ever made me not want to go back, but there has been some weird shit. First, there's just a lot of weird stuff in the woods. Teepees, altars, lean-tos, shrines, etc. Some of it's pretty creepy, but I think most of it is just built by bored people who are trying to make something creepy, so that makes it a bit less scary. Among the strangest of these things that I've seen are a large clearing of trees with all but one entrance blocked off by webs of red strings, and a giant stone pentagram stretched across the clearing, 30 feet diameter, a wooden tunnel leading to a small room containing defaced religious icons, Buddha statues, crucifixes, stars of David, etc. And dozens/hundreds of creepy Polaroid pictures hanging from the ceiling. Ones I remember include a close-up face shot of a girl sleeping, a dude brushing his teeth taken from outside of the window, and a photo booth strip of two girls where one of their faces are crossed out, and "I'm glad you're dead" written with one word on each picture, and a number of weird little shrines with creepy scriptures printed or scrawled into them. But what's a lot scarier to me is stuff that isn't meant to be creepy like the aforementioned things hopefully are. I once heard a distant panic scream followed by a crashing/thudding sound. I couldn't tell from which direction it came from, and I didn't hear anything else, so I have no idea what it was. I think the creepiest thing I've experienced was one time while walking home from school through the woods. I heard people talking in the distance, and I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they seemed to be arguing. They were quiet for a minute, and then I heard them again, really close now. The forest was really dense here, so although they sounded maybe 15 to 20 feet away, I couldn't see them or pinpoint exactly where they were. This time I could hear what they said. Guy 1, "It's fucked up, you guys always make me." Guy 2, in a hushed voice, "Shh. Someone's coming." Guy 1, now also hushed, "Shit." Guy 3, from a bit further to my left than the other guys, who sounded to be mostly right in front of me, "Hurry." Rustling noise. Guy 1, "Fuck." Guy 2, "SHH." I came around a corner and expected to see them, but I couldn't see anyone. I kept walking, cautious and trying to be aware of my surroundings. About 10 feet past the corner, I saw something to the left of the trail, close to where the voices were coming from, that caught my eye. It was a bunch of stuff wrapped up in a big tarp. It wasn't completely wrapped up, and you could kind of see into it. All I could see was something glass, and I wanted to see what it was. I scanned the forest behind the tarp to make sure nobody was watching, and then stepped towards it. Suddenly, one of them says, "Keep walking," very calmly. I looked back into the forest but still couldn't see anyone. They said go, still calm. I looked for another second, still unable to see a soul, and then turned and kept walking as nothing had happened. I don't know what was going on, but the whole thing gave me the creepiest vibe I've ever gotten. A long time ago, my grandparents bought a small cabin in the woods in Pennsylvania. My dad, uncle, and aunt are all small children. My father told me this story. They're all sitting around outside with a small fire going when they hear branches breaking and footsteps coming from the darkness. They think it's a black bear because it's close, but they can't see it. It seems to be going straight for my uncle, the littlest of the children. He starts panicking while everyone tells him not to move. Now, this big black beast is within arm's reach of him, and he's shaking like a leaf with his eyes closed. All of a sudden, it opens its jaws and starts licking his face. It turns out that the next property over is owned by a couple who raise Newfoundland dogs, and one got out. My family owns a couple of 100 acres of forest in eastern NC. No one lives on the property anymore, and hasn't for the last 6 or 7 years. We went down there to do some target shooting in October of 2017, and I decided to go walk through the outskirts of the woods to locate a good limb for our range marker. As I'm walking, literally and proverbially kicking rocks, I come across a fairly nice, but practically brand new looking suitcase, full of clothes and other personal effects. No ID, nothing with any sort of identifying markers on them. But seemed to be clothes for 4 people, 2 kids and 2 adults, 1 male and 1 female. Had some food, coloring books, etc. There was a makeshift lean-to about 100 yards farther into the woods. Set up a trail camera and left it there for 3 weeks, never saw anyone. For reference, this is 35 miles from any sizable town or city. There is a place in Kingston, Idaho, or the other side of Fernand Saddle depending on which way you go to get there. I call it the Snake Pit, and no, I don't mean the restaurant. I still visit the area now once in a while and camp there. Anyways, next to where I camp in the trees is a basin, and it has a bunch of old 1920s 1930s rotted cars in it, overgrown by bushes and trees, but sunlight falls on the cars. The first time I camped out there, I walked into those woods, and the leaves all started to move. The snakes were running from me while they were sunbathing on the cars. Fucking creeped me out. I don't go in there for wood anymore, and I don't see the snakes leave that spot, so I just let them be. My father and I were following a trail for a while, so we decided to take a break and catch our breaths. I sat on a log off the trail, and my dad stood on the edge of the trail waiting for me to get up. I hear some movement and scan around, and I see a man dressed casually, walking quickly down the trail with a Glock in his hand. He is not really following the trail, he is just walking toward my dad with haste. Before he comes up to my dad, he asks if he's seen anything pretty normal. I keep an eye on him because I don't believe he was there to hunt. I think he was there to make sure my dad hadn't seen anything he wasn't supposed to. He wasn't dressed like a hunter, he didn't walk like a hunter, and it was deer season, and he decided he would take his Glock out to get a deer. I wasn't buying, so I put a round in the chamber and watched them talk. He seemed to be confident until my dad mentioned that he was here with me and gestured in my direction. I nodded and made a half-assed wave. And he seemed to lose interest in us and ended the conversation shortly after and turned around and walked back the way he came, just about as fast as he walked up to us. It worried us a bit, but we continued on. We haven't been back to that area in a while. My dad told me that there have been drug busts near that area in the past. This isn't a supernatural tale, just an experience that made me not want to go back to that area. I've got one good one. I have a hunting spot that I frequent. Not crazy far off the grid or anything like that. The terrain is a pain in the ass, but it's a pretty hidden spot that is close to my house. Anyway, I hunt a lot of small game there and see a ton of mule deer anytime I go out. One morning I get there about 5:30 a.m. and have some time to kill before I start my hike in. I have an odd feeling in the parking lot, but just chalk it up to too much coffee on an empty stomach giving me anxiety. So, I decided to start hiking in, and about 300 yards into my hike, I noticed this pile of down trees / branches / general debris that I hadn't seen before. It was my first time hunting this particular place this particular season, so I figure some folks came out and did some fire mitigation work. I don't pay too much attention to it until I notice there's an odd amount of movement coming from it. Pretty small movements, but it sticks out when a brush pile is wiggling on a still day. It was also about 5:45 a.m., and the wilderness just sort of has this stillness to it at that time that any movement is noticeable. So, I stop and start examining the pile to figure out what's going on. I figure there's a rabbit in there, maybe some squirrels. I figure I've hit the jackpot, and I'm definitely about to bag something. I start deciding the best way to flush whatever is going on in there and still have my shotgun up in time to take a good shot. I realize I'm standing by a decent-sized branch, and my best move is to just stomp on the branch. If all goes according to plan, everything will freeze, then whatever is in there will dart out. I try to figure out where the rabbit will come out of, get ready, and bam, I stomp on the branch and snap it in half. The pile goes still, and that stillness and quiet is back. Then, a mountain lion, with a bloody nose and mouth, pops up out of the pile. At this point, I'm about 10 yards from the pile. I have my shotgun, but really don't want to shoot the lion. I also don't want to fire a shot off in the air to scare it, because all in all, this was a pretty cool experience that very few people get to have. It froze and was looking at me very quizzically. Then, in one quick motion, it hopped out of the brush pile, ran uphill, got about 40 yards from me, and disappeared into the trees. I've never seen something cover 40 yards uphill in such a fast, graceful way. One of the cooler things I've ever gotten to experience. I went to check out the brush pile when it left, and sure enough, it was feasting on a mule deer. Still my favorite out in the woods story I ever tell. I work in the woods for a living, and I've seen a fair amount of odd things. Carvings in trees, old beat-up cars, random weird trash scattered through the woods, and a fair amount of animal carcasses. I've had instances where I've gotten spooked. Stuff like jumping big critters is always quite jolting, but I can recall one rather butt-puckering experience. I was working with a few other people at the time, spaced out of sight but not out of earshot. I crossed over a little ridge at least 2 miles from the closest road, in the middle of the woods, and I saw what looked like a full skeleton of a cow tied together with twigs and a little bit of twine. Whoever made it had fashioned it to be sitting on a log. They left a very neat pile of bones in front of the thing, and nothing anywhere else. I saw it and about fainted. Definitely really fucking odd considering how far we were off the road, and how thick and steep it was. I ended up getting the folks I was with to come to check it out, really just for shits and giggles. I took note of it, and we moved on to the next plots. I have a picture, but I'm new to this whole Reddit thing, so I'll try to figure out how to upload it. Not a hunter, but I go backpacking and fishing quite a bit. I have an irrational fear of bears, and waking up to bear tracks around my camp was quite unsettling, and I did not spend much more time in the area. I've also had a creepy encounter with an overly friendly deer. I was in a pretty isolated area, so I thought it was odd to see a deer that was so calm around humans. This deer would not leave me alone. It walked around my camp all day and came back at night to scare the shit out of me by laying down outside my tent. When I was a kid, a poacher must have thought I was a deer or something and shot around at me. It impacted on a tree above my head. I immediately fired 3 shots as fast as I could, not at the shooter but in the air. In my hunting group, immediate 3 shots mean help, basically. My dad and our hunting club immediately came out to find out what the fuck happened by honking the horns of their trucks, letting me know they were coming. I basically laid on the ground until I could tell they were near the dirt road. Told them what happened and guessed it was probably a road poacher trying to get a deer as it came from the same road. They didn't see him. It was private property, and we were always very aware of who was at what location and who was hunting where. Nobody was supposed to be in the part I was at. Scared the shit out of me. This was the mid-90s. The reason why I don't like hunting on public property is cause of that, and I don't know the people out there. Camping alone in the middle of Missouri the night before turkey hunting. The place I found was a fairly well-used campsite, but no one was there. About to go to sleep when I hear a truck come up. I find a reason to come out, use the restroom, so I can get a look and maybe even ask for some good places to spot turkey. It's a dude and his girlfriend drinking beers and going for a ride. They are super nice, but they mentioned after our chat and before leaving, watch yourself out here. Lots of meth heads and they won't stop for bird shot. Want a slug? I probably have a few in my toolkit. I did not sleep at all that night.